Hi there, and welcome to Hyundai Power Equipment. My name's Adrian, and today we're going to look at the HYCH7070E-2 wood chipper. Okay, let's get straight on with it then. Having removed all the packaging, I've laid everything out here on the table for you to see. First of all, we have the main engine and chipper assembly here, which is fairly obvious. It's a great big piece in the box. Secondly, we have, this is a bit of a beast as well, the main inlet chute. This is the upper outlet chute, the lower outlet chute, the rectangular battery support tray, the battery box, and in the white box is the battery itself. Next we have the black toolbox. And then there are four parts of framework. The square part of the framework here, this long part of the lower frame, the lower axle assembly, another part of the lower frame, the two wheels, an oil filling jug, your user manual, and inside here are also all the tools you're going to need for assembly. And then you have a green pouch, and in that pouch is some of your protective equipment. A pair of ear defenders, a pair of working gloves, and a pair of goggles. And that's the contents of your packaging. Okay, to start the assembly. The first stage, you're going to need the main engine itself, your two wheels, and this axle assembly. Now I've already removed the split pins and washers from both ends of the shaft in preparation to fit the wheels. So let's get straight on with it. I've also salvaged some of the bubble wrap that comes with the protection in the box of the packaging, so that when I lean the unit over, it protects the paintwork on the unit. Okay? So, I have the fan belt or the fan drive facing me, so I need to lay it down on this face, which is the starter motor face, with the exhaust up and the air filter up. So I'll get on and do that. And there we are, nicely protected on the bubble wrap. So taking the axle, we need to remove the 4 bolts, washers and spring washers. From the tools that came in the toolkit, use a 13mm spanner and your quick drive 13 socket. They're not tightened up, and if any of these 4 bolts are missing, it's possible that they vibrated off during transport, so have a good look in the bottom of your packing crate, before you throw the packing crate out. All the nuts and bolts are in their holes, but should they vibrate loose, there is a possibility that they could be among the packaging or in the bottom of your crate. So just be mindful of that. Okay, you will see that this will only go in one way round. You have 2 holes here, a high one, low one, high one, low one. If I turn it round this way, obviously the low one's on the wrong side and the high one's on the wrong side, so make sure that you put the axle in correctly. And it fits on the inside face. A little wriggle in the jiggle you're going to need just to line the holes up. Once you've got a couple in, it's plain sailing. Let me have a look. Here we are. There's one. So you've got a bolt with a washer, and I'm going from the outside in. That's 2. I'll place all 4 in their positions before I fit the nuts and bolts, nuts and washers. Just get them lined up. Nearly there. It is a good fit in here, so you need to just wiggle it slightly to get it in line. There's 3, and the 4th one should just fly in. And 4. Okay, so the next step on the inside is to fit a plain washer on each bolt, a spring washer on each bolt, and then on with your nylock nut. And I'll fit them on all four before I start tightening. So it's plain washer, spring washer, nylock nut, exactly the same over here, plain washer, spring washer, and the nut. Couple of pieces left. Oops, slippery little devil. Plain washer, spring washer, and a nylock nut. Obviously the next step is tighten up the bolts. Putting your 13mm spanner on the inside, you'll be able to use your quick drive tool and tighten up the 4 bolts. And the 4th one, okay. So having fitted the axle, the next step is to fit the wheels. Now you will notice that you have the valve for filling the tyres with air on the outside, and it has a boss on the inside. So when fitting the wheels, boss facing in on both wheels. On with the washer. You will notice that there was some grease on the axle already. In with the split pin, and using the spanner, just bend the lug at 90 degrees. And that's how to fit the wheels. So having fitted the axle and both wheels, next step is to bring it back to upright. So I'll do that now. That's as far as I'm going to get it for the moment. What I'm going to do is move it across my bench and lay it back down on this face. Again, I've got the bubble wrap to protect the paint. So just bring it this way a little. It's a little bit heavy. Bear with me. Oh. You'd normally have it a bit lower down than that on a workbench like this. I've got to have it up here so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so that was straightforward enough. If there were 2 of you, it'd be a lot easier, but I'm doing this on my own. Okay, that side's done. Now we're going to work on this side. The parts I need for this, I shall get out and explain to you now. Again, the 13mm spanner and the T-bar socket. This U-shaped part with the 2 rubber feet. The battery tray, and last of all we're going to use the large long chassis part. So the first step, you will see that there are 8 bolts in here, 4 in sideways, 4 going top to bottom. We're going to remove the top to bottom ones and put them out of the way to start with. So I shall do that. Again, these should be just finger tight. Now you've got a bolt, a nylock nut, a spring washer and 2 flat washers. I'll take them out of the way for use later. Again, if you see any of these bolts aren't in the holes, they could well be in the bottom of the box if they vibrate. But it's not common, but it can happen. So that's the 4 bolts that we're going vertically through, removed and put to one side. They're a different length and size to these ones, hence why I've separated them out. So next job is to remove these 4 bolts. This time you have a bolt, 1 flat washer, 1 spring washer and the nut. And the last one's just a little bit tight. So this bar, with the rubber feet facing in the same direction as the wheels, drops down in the little half round slot that you see in the bottom of the frame here. And if you look through the holes, you will see daylight through the 4 holes, or near enough. What I'll do at this stage is just put 1 bolt through from the outside so that it just protrudes through the inside. At this stage we need to fit the battery tray. Again, the battery tray, the flat part of the tray facing away from the engine with the lugs facing up towards the engine, basically fitting inside here. I'll push the bolt through the hole in that. So one bolt goes through the hole from the frame, through the hole in the U-shaped bar, and through the hole in the battery tray. Before I tighten any bolts up, I'll get them all in position. Quite simple to fit really, a little bit of wriggling and jiggling about. As you can see, if I wriggle and jiggle that, I can do it with my, well, basically unsighted. And the same on this bracket. And that's it, that's the 4 bolts in. Next step, washer, spring washer, and nut on the inside. So I'll do that on all 4. Bolt from the outside in, washer, spring washer, and a nut. Identical on this side. Washer, spring washer, nut, and exactly the same again. Okay, 13mm spanner on the inside, and you can use the T-wrench to tighten up the 4 bolts. One. That's the 2. That's 3 done. Where am I? Here we are. And that's 4. And that's the lower part of the frame done. Next thing we're going to do is stand it back up again. So I've stood the machine back up, and it's now on its rubber feet and on its 2 wheels, and it's starting to look like a machine. The next thing, we'll take the large frame we showed you earlier. This is going to bolt. It has 4 holes, and there are 4 holes in the top of the frame here. So it's going to bolt on here with the loop facing up. So a simple way to do this, put a bolt through one corner, and we're located in that hole. Another one in the other hole. Come to my side, that's 3. And the last bolt, that's 4. Bolt with a washer under the head, straight down through. And again, you know the story now. A washer, a spring washer, and a nut. Rinse and repeat 4 times. Washer, spring, washer, nut. I'll do the same here. That's a slippery one. Washer, spring washer, nut, washer, spring washer, and nut. Okay, tighten up the 4 bolts. That's the 3rd one. And that's the upper part of the lower frame done. Let's carry on and fit the lower outlet chute. As you can see, it's got a rectangular end and a square end on the top. Fairly obvious in this area here. Okay. Remove the 4 bolts, washers, spring washers, and nuts. That's 1. 2. And these 2 on this side. Okay, this time bolt with a washer already on it. This will go on one of two ways, but you will notice in the one orientation it's very close, the gap, to here. If the gap is very close, turn it around the other way. Now that way, as you can see, it won't go. So it will only go the one way, although the bolts will fit two ways. So find a way where it's missing the top of the engine and place the 4 bolts in the holes. That's a bolt with a washer under the head. Okay. You know the story by now. 4 bolts, washers under the head of the bolt, washer, spring washer, nut. I take it you've got the gist of that by now, so I'll stop there, bolt them up off camera, and we'll move on to the next stage. So I've tightened up the 4 bolts in the usual manner on the lower part of the outlet chute. We'll just talk about the upper part of the outlet chute. It will fit one of 4 ways, but then you wouldn't really want to fit it that way around and cover yourself in chippings. So it can come either out of this side of the machine towards yourselves, out of this side of the machine towards me, or out to the rear of the machine. If I demonstrate out to the rear, you'll see it has clips on either side, one that side and one that side, and it also has an adjustable flap on the top so that you can bring your chippings down into a bag or a wheelbarrow or whatever you're using here, or if you want to throw them a bit further, you can basically choose how far you want the wood chippings to go. Okay, and that's the outlet chute. I'll just remove it, keep it out of the way while we're doing the rest of the assembly. Okay, so that's the outlet chute. The next step we're going to do is to fit the control panel. Now, it's taken away from the engine and put down here for safekeeping during transport and when it's in its packaging. You'll see on the control panel the key on this face, and there are 2 lugs here to go over a bolt. On the bottom of the fuel tank, quite often these 2 bolts or nuts are already loose for you. Basically, what is going to happen is that the 2 forks are going to go underneath the nuts like so and hold it back with one hand, and at the same time, using a 10mm spanner this time, in from underneath, nearly there, we'll tighten down the nuts until the control panel is secure, nearly there. Okay, now at this point, just have a look at your cables. They're all little bullet connectors here. Just have a look to make sure that none of them are pulled out and they haven't caught on anything as you're going up. So if any of them have come out, just plug them back together and just to complete the wiring. Okay, and that's how to fit the control panel. Some batteries need preparation. When you remove your battery from the battery box, read the instructions and follow them meticulously to prepare your battery. Some batteries are pre-prepared and need no further work. So, having prepared your battery, we'll show you how to connect it up. With the battery will be 2 nuts and 2 bolts. I'll connect the positive lead first, which is the red lead, onto the plus terminal. So just holding the bolt on the inside, I'll just start the screw with my fingers, and I'll finish it off with a spanner, 10mm. Okay, place the rubber cap up and over the terminal. So having fitted the live terminal on the positive side of the battery, now I'll fit the negative terminal on the minus side of the battery. Here we go. Before you connect it, just make sure your key is in the off position. And get it started with your fingers. Screwdriver is probably the easiest way for this. Okay, and that's tight. you'll see we're bringing these two cables down in this direction, across and down this corner of the battery. So having connected the two terminals, I want the one wire to run down this side of the battery and the other wire to run down this side. The reason for this is that the wires are going to run down through these circular ducts here. So what I need to do is fit the battery into the battery box, up from the bottom, just making sure that the wires are coming down the two slots, like so. Push the battery up into the battery box, and the next step will be to slide. You will see two guides on the bottom of the battery box to slide them on to the edges of the battery tray. It's quite simple. Just line it up. Not quite. And that's it. Taking care not to trap the wires. And push the battery tray back. As you can see, it's held in position until the hole lines up for the bolt. A little bit of housekeeping on your cables here, just to make sure they're neat and tidy and not rubbing on anything. Easiest way to fit this bolt is up from the bottom, because it's very difficult to get your fingers in to get the nut and washer on the bottom. So on with the spring washer, on with the nut, and tighten down. So I've placed the inlet chute up on the table here so you can see what I'm doing. First thing I'm going to do is to remove this bolt. Simply unscrew it from its location here, and we'll put that to one side for later. So next we're going to fit the safety bar. First thing I'm going to do is remove these little assemblies of bolts on the top, ready for fitting to the main hopper inlet. And the next thing, I'm going to fit the little spring and bolt assembly in here that we took off from the chute earlier. So we'll remove the nylon nut that I just put there for safety, the plain nut, and the spring. So in this orientation, I'm going to fit the bolt through from this side facing away, then the spring, and then back on, back on with the plain nut. And I'm going to tighten this plain nut up several turns, compressing the spring as I go. Not all the way, you haven't got to be ridiculous with it, but a good way up to give you room for adjustment. Okay, so that's the sub-assembly of the safety bar. The next step is to fit the safety bar to the hopper. I'll bring the hopper into frame. Okay, looking at this area here, the safety bar is going to fit in the hinges here, and it needs to be lipped underneath this flange and through the lower hole in the bracket, like this. I'll give you a close-up of this later. The next step, bring you back into frame again, is going to be to fit the two little hinge bolts. So I'll start with this one. Just get it started. And just get the lower one started. Okay. Having got them started, I can now tighten them up all the way with my 13mm spanner. So the next thing to do is to adjust the tension here on the spring. As you can see, it's very loose at the moment. I haven't put the bottom nut on. What you're looking for is a parallel gap here between these two bars. So if the gap closes this end, wind this nut in this direction, and if it opens this end, obviously wind it the other. So I'm quite happy with that amount of parallelism. This is a rough adjustment to start with. On with the nylock nut on the end, and we shall lock this nut off, and that's the basic adjustment for the switch. And as you can see, if I pull down on the safety bar, it makes the switch here, which will shut off the engine. And this is the finished assembly. What I'm going to do is fit the inlet chute onto this flange here, with the lower flange of the chute onto this flange here. So I'm going to remove these 6 bolts, put it in position, put the bolts in and tighten the bolts up. So having tightened up the 6 bolts for the chute, final little job on the chute assembly is to connect the safety switch plug here. Now you see it has a barb on one side and a receptacle on the other, and it will only go that way round. Push it home firmly, tuck it in out the way, making sure it's not going to rub anything, and that's that connection made. The toolbox fits onto the frame here. Inside the toolbox you'll see the 2 nuts and bolts, the large washers inside the box, and the bolts down inside the box to the outside like that. Down onto the frame with the lid facing towards the back. There we go. And the normal procedure: washer, spring washer, and nuts. So we'll do 2 of those, tighten them up, and that's the toolbox fitted. Well, that's the mechanical side of the assembly done. The next thing to do is put engine oil in and fuel. Now we're going to fill the engine with engine oil. Now it's absolutely essential that you fill with engine oil before you try starting the wood chipper, as it does ship to you with no oil in it. Okay, so you could fill the oil either from this plug or this plug. It makes no difference, whichever is easiest for you. Unscrew the plug, and that gives you access to the sump of the engine. Using a suitable container, put the spout into the bottom and fill with engine oil. Now it's either a 1030 or 1540 grade engine oil. When it gets to the point where the level of oil is right to the top of the spout on the lower level or the weir point and is about to be dribbling out, that's the correct oil level. Right up to the top of the filler neck, to the bottom surface, not the top obviously, to the bottom surface, to the point where it's just about to come flowing back out again. Once you've filled it, replace the oil filler plug, tighten it firmly, and just make sure that the other one's tight as well. And that's how to fill the oil. Let's put petrol in your wood chipper. The fuel cap is located here on top of the fuel tank on the top of the engine. It does have a fuel strainer. Probably recommend that you leave that in to stop getting anything into your tank. Now, little safety note: never fill with fuel when the engine is hot, and certainly not with the engine running. If you should spill fuel and it would get on this hot exhaust, it could be a real fire hazard. So make sure that there's no spillage or fuel leakage before you start it again, and obviously make sure that it's cold, or certainly not at any sort of temperature, before you put fuel in the machine. So okay, fresh unleaded petrol into the tank, in the top. Don't really have to show you that. Fill it up to about within 25 millimeters or 1 inch of the top of the tank. You will see that there is a red marker in the filter. Once the fuel gets to the level of that red marker, that's the ideal fuel level for a full tank. Okay, once you've fueled it, replace the fuel cap, tighten it firmly, and as I say, if you have any spills or what have you, clean them up with some, with a cloth, and let it evaporate completely before you start the machine again. And that's the fuel. To start your wood chipper, first of all, the key is in this position here. Here's the carburetor, that's the throttle. The top lever here is the choke, and the lower one is the fuel tap. So for a cold start, you will need to turn the fuel tap on, which is to the right, the choke on, which is to the left, and the throttle in the fast position. To the right is slow, to the left is fast. Then simply turn the key to the on position and turn it right across to the crank position. The engine will crank. Once the engine is fired, release the key back to the on position and after a few seconds, turn the choke to the off position. If the engine attempts to stall, just leave it on choke for a few seconds more before turning it off. And that is how you start it for a cold start. When you want to stop the machine, simply turn the key to the off position. For a warm start, will be exactly the same. Fuel on, may not need the choke depending on how recently you've been using it and how warm it is. Throttle on, turn the key to on and crank. Release the key once it's fired and away to go. Adjust the throttle to where you want it. Again, to stop the machine, turn the key to the off position. Should you have a flat battery, again, fuel on, cold start would be choke on, throttle to the fast position, key just to the on position, and then they use the cold start to start the machine. Exactly the same for a cold start with a flat battery, or warm start, you just don't need any choke. Okay, and that's how to start your wood chipper. I do hope you found this assembly demonstration useful. For more information on your wood chipper or any of our other products, simply visit hyundaipowerequipment.co.uk. I've been Adrian and happy chipping!